You must confront and eliminate the weak version of yourself, because every limitation you allow to live inside, you will continue to shape your actions, decisions, and outcomes. That weaker self is built from years of hesitation, fear, uncertainty, and habits that no longer belong in the life you want to create. It thrives in the shadows of your doubts, feeding on every moment you convince yourself that you're not ready or not capable. To eliminate that version, you must first bring it into the light, acknowledge the ways it has controlled your behavior, and refuse to let it dominate another season of your life. The weak version of you is familiar, and that's why it survives. It whispers comfortable lies about staying where you are. It convinces you that change will be too difficult, too risky, or too overwhelming. But every great transformation begins with awareness, and awareness is the start of confrontation. You cannot defeat what you won't face. When you confront that weaker identity, you strip it of its influence and begin to separate who you truly are from who you've allowed yourself to become. This confrontation is not emotional, it's intentional. It requires you to question your own patterns. Why do you delay what matters? Why do you settle when you know you can rise higher? Why do you choose comfort even when you crave growth? These questions reveal the cracks in your old identity, exposing the excuses and internal stories that have held you back. When you confront these truths honestly, the illusion of weakness starts to unravel, making space for a stronger version of you to emerge. Eliminating the weak version of yourself isn't a single moment, but a series of choices. Every day, you must decide who you want to be. In the face of pressure, will you revert to old patterns or stand in discipline? In moments where you're tempted to quit, will you embrace strength or sink back into familiar habits? The weak version of you dies slowly through repetition of stronger actions that contradict who you used to be. The old version of you will resist. It will try to reclaim its position when life becomes stressful or when uncertainty surfaces. It will use your past as evidence that you are not capable of change. This is where you must remain unshakable. Eliminating that version of yourself means refusing to negotiate with your weaknesses. You remove the option of going back. You take away the exit doors. You commit to a new identity. Even on days when it feels uncomfortable or inconvenient, this process also requires honesty about the people, environments, and routines that reinforce your weaker self. Sometimes the person you want to become cannot exist in the same spaces or with the same influence you've been allowing. You cannot conquer your weak identity while surrounding yourself with things that strengthen it. Change demands separation from anything that feeds your old patterns and strengthens the parts of you that must be left behind. As you confront this internal conflict, you begin to realize that weakness isn't about lack of strength, it's about lack of alignment. When your actions contradict your goals, the weaker version grows. When your habits clash with your dreams, your old identity gets stronger. Eliminating that version means taking back control of your alignment. Every thought, every action, and every decision must move you toward the person you are working to become. The more you practice this confrontation, the clearer your identity becomes. You begin to recognize that the weak version of you was built from survival, not intention. It was created for moments when you didn't know better or couldn't do better. Eliminating it is not about shame, it's about evolution. It's about acknowledging that you no longer need the patterns that once kept you small, because the future you're building requires a stronger foundation. Over time, you begin to replace weak habits with powerful ones. You replace hesitation with action, distraction with discipline, and fear with clarity. You start showing up differently, not because someone else demands it, but because your identity is shifting. This is how the weaker version loses its power, by being starved of your attention and replaced with new habits that align with the stronger self you are choosing to embody. Eventually, confronting and eliminating the weak version of yourself becomes a natural part of your growth. You start noticing the moments where the old identity tries to return, and instead of surrendering, you rise higher. You understand that your transformation depends on your willingness to consistently choose strength over convenience, truth over excuses, and purpose over fear. Through this continuous commitment, you create space for the strongest, most disciplined, most powerful version of yourself to take over completely. True transformation begins with a decisive choice, a moment where you stop entertaining the idea of change and finally commit to becoming someone you've never been before. It doesn't happen gradually or accidentally. It's not born from wishful thinking or temporary motivation. It starts the second you draw a hard line between who you were and who you're willing to become. This choice doesn't need permission, applause, or approval. It just needs honesty. The kind of honesty that forces you to admit that your life will only rise to the level of the decisions you make with conviction. A decisive choice is powerful because it instantly rearranges your priorities. Suddenly, the excuses that used to feel valid lose their authority. The distractions that once consumed your time become unacceptable. The limitations you believed about yourself begin to dissolve because the moment you choose something with your whole heart, your mind starts searching for the path that will make it real. It's not the choice itself that transforms you, but the alignment it creates between your intention and your identity. This choice becomes the turning point where you stop negotiating with your old patterns. Instead of asking, can I do this? You begin asking, what must change for me to do this? That shift in mindset is what separates temporary efforts from lasting transformation. When you choose with decisiveness, you stop waiting for the perfect moment and start creating momentum from the moment you decide. You realize that hesitation is the enemy of elevation, and clarity is the birthplace of new beginnings. Transformation requires a decision that is not emotional, but anchored in commitment. Emotions fluctuate, motivation fades, and inspiration comes in waves, but a true decision outlasts all of that. It stays steady even on days when you don't feel like moving forward. It doesn't depend on external encouragement because it becomes part of your internal identity. You don't hope you'll change. You know you will because you've already chosen to. A decisive choice forces you to confront the gap between where you are and where you want to be. It shines a light on the habits, routines, and environments that have contributed to your current reality. You can't choose transformation without also choosing accountability. And accountability exposes the areas where you've been settling, delaying, or making excuses. Once you see those truths clearly, you can no longer pretend not to know them, and that knowledge becomes the fuel for change. This choice also separates you from people and patterns that can't follow you into your next level. When you decide to transform, it disrupts the comfort of the relationships, identities, and expectations that benefit from your stagnation. Choosing transformation is not just about adding new habits. It's about letting go of old identities. It's about releasing everything that no longer aligns with the direction you're moving toward. The choice must be strong enough to override your attachment to familiarity. The moment you make that choice, something shifts inside you. The world around you may look the same, but your mind responds differently. Challenges that once broke your momentum become opportunities to reinforce your commitment. Setbacks that used to discourage you turn into reminders of why you made the choice in the first place. Transformation is not about eliminating difficulty. It's about strengthening your resolve so that difficulty no longer stops you. A decisive choice creates a ripple effect throughout your entire life. You begin to walk differently, think differently, and speak differently, not because you're pretending, but because the decision reshapes the way you see yourself. You are no longer someone trying to improve, you become someone destined to rise. And when your identity shifts, your actions naturally follow. You start doing the things you once avoided because the version of you making the decisions isn't the same as before. This choice becomes the anchor you return to when discipline gets tested. There will be days when progress feels slow, when setbacks feel unfair, and when doubt tries to return. But the power of a decisive choice is that it gives you something to stand on, a reason, a commitment, a declaration that keeps you moving even when circumstances try to pull you backward. Without that choice, every obstacle becomes a reason to quit. With it, every obstacle becomes part of the journey. Over time, that single moment of decision becomes the foundation of everything you build. The choice evolves into habits. The habits become identity, and the identity shapes your destiny. Transformation is not an accident, it's a deliberate rewrite of who you are and who you refuse to remain. And the starting point of that entire process is the decisive moment when you finally choose to change with complete clarity and unwavering determination. Discipline replaces convenience because the life you want requires choices that your feelings will rarely agree with. Convenience offers comfort, ease, and temporary relief, while discipline demands effort, intention, and consistency. Convenience whispers, do it later, but discipline tells you, do it now because your future depends on it. When you begin choosing discipline over convenience, you shift from reacting to life to shaping it. You stop relying on moods and start relying on commitment. And that shift becomes the foundation of every level of growth you will ever experience. Convenience is seductive because it gives you instant satisfaction without requiring any real sacrifice. It allows you to avoid discomfort, dodge responsibility, and postpone effort. But every convenient shortcut you take comes at the cost of your long-term potential. Discipline, on the other hand, is uncomfortable in the moment, but rewarding in the long run. It forces you to confront your weaknesses, sharpen your strengths, and take action even when you don't feel like it. And that is precisely why discipline is the gateway to transformation. The more you choose convenience, the more powerless you become. It keeps you trapped in cycles where you do the bare minimum and hope for maximum results. But hope is not a strategy, and convenience is not a path to greatness. Discipline interrupts those cycles. It teaches you that your goals don't care about your excuses, your dreams don't care about your distractions, and your future doesn't care about your comfort. Discipline is the bridge that connects intention to achievement. When discipline begins to take the place of convenience, your identity starts to shift. You stop identifying yourself by your limitations and begin defining yourself by your standards. You wake up with a sense of purpose instead of a sense of pressure. You prioritize what must be done over what is easiest to do. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but every disciplined act recalibrates your mindset, aligning your behavior with the person you want to become rather than the person you've been. Choosing discipline over convenience also means accepting that progress will not always feel good. There will be days when the disciplined action feels heavy, boring, or exhausting, but those are the days that shape you the most. When you act despite resistance, you prove to yourself that your commitment is stronger than your comfort zone. Convenience never develops this kind of strength. It only creates habits that weaken your resolve and lower your standards. Discipline transforms your relationship with time. Convenience wastes it. Discipline invests it. When you live by convenience, you move without urgency because you assume there will always be more time. But discipline reveals that time is your most valuable currency, and every moment you spend avoiding the work is a moment you can never reclaim. When you choose discipline, you treat every day as an opportunity instead of an obstacle. Discipline also builds internal trust. When you consistently do what you said you would do, you begin to believe in yourself at a deeper level. You stop questioning your ability to follow through because your actions become evidence of your integrity. Convenience destroys that trust. It teaches you to break promises to yourself and accept your own excuses as valid reasons. Over time, that erodes your confidence and dims your potential. As discipline replaces convenience, you develop habits that support your goals rather than sabotage them. You create routines that strengthen your focus, sharpen your skills, and elevate your performance. You begin to realize that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about freedom. The freedom to live life on your terms because you have earned the results through consistent, intentional effort. Convenience feels like freedom in the moment, but it traps you in a life you didn't choose consciously. Choosing discipline is also choosing responsibility. It means acknowledging that your life is a reflection of your daily decisions, not your desires. It means accepting that nothing changes until your behaviors change. Responsibility can feel heavy, but it's also empowering because it places your future back in your hands. Convenience tries to convince you that external factors control your outcomes, but discipline reminds you that you hold the steering wheel of your destiny. Eventually, when discipline becomes your default and convenience becomes the exception, you start operating on a different level. Your standards rise, your goals become clearer, and your execution becomes sharper. You stop being controlled by impulses and start being guided by purpose. And every area of your life, your health, your relationships, your mindset, your finances, begins to reflect the power of choosing discipline over convenience again and again until it becomes who you are. Your environment, habits, and standards must be rebuilt because the life you want cannot be constructed on the foundation of the life you're trying to leave behind. You cannot elevate yourself while remaining surrounded by the same influences, routines, and expectations that shaped your old identity. Growth requires new spaces, new rhythms, and new expectations that match the future you're working toward. Everything around you either reinforces your progress or reinforces your past, and if you don't redesign it intentionally, it will continue shaping you by default. Your environment plays a silent but powerful role in who you become. The places you spend your time, the people you allow close, and the energy you absorb from your surroundings all influence your decisions. If you stay in an environment where complacency is normal, ambition will feel uncomfortable. If the people around you settle for less, excellence will feel unnatural. Rebuilding your environment doesn't always mean walking away from everything, but it does mean surrounding yourself with people and spaces that push you to rise higher instead of staying comfortable. Habits must also be rebuilt because your daily actions are the architects of your destiny. You cannot keep the same routines and expect a different outcome. The habits that once felt harmless reveal their true cost when you measure them against your potential. Every habit either builds you or breaks you. Rebuilding your habits requires honesty about where your time goes, where your energy leaks, and where your discipline weakens. It demands replacing autopilot behaviors with intentional actions that align with your goals and identity. When you rebuild your habits, you begin creating momentum in areas where you once felt stuck. Small actions repeated consistently create massive transformation over time. But this requires discipline, not convenience. It requires choosing what's necessary over what's easy. It requires waking up with purpose rather than drifting into your day without direction. Your new habits become the compass that keeps you aligned even when motivation fades or distractions try to pull you back into your old patterns. Your standards must be rebuilt as well because your standards determine the quality of your decisions, relationships, and outcomes. When your standards are low, you tolerate behaviors, environments, and habits that limit your growth. When your standards rise, you stop accepting things that drain your potential. Rebuilding your standards means refusing to settle, refusing to negotiate with excuses, and refusing to entertain anything that contradicts the level of life you aim to build. High standards protect your progress and guide your choices. Rebuilding standards often requires difficult choices. You may need to distance yourself from people who hold you to your past instead of supporting your future. You may need to raise your expectations of yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. You may need to let go of patterns that once felt familiar but now restrict your evolution. This process is not easy, but it is necessary because the version of you you're becoming cannot thrive under the standards that belong to who you used to be. As you rebuild your environment, habits, and standards, you begin to notice shifts in your mindset. Opportunities appear where limitations once existed. You start seeing possibilities instead of problems. You recognize your own potential with clarity because everything around you supports your growth rather than suppressing it. This shift in mindset is not accidental. It's the result of building a life that nurtures your transformation rather than sabotaging it. Rebuilding also requires consistency. You can't redesign your environment once and expect permanent change. You can't build new habits for a week and expect lifelong transformation. You can't raise your standards temporarily and expect people to respect them forever. Rebuilding is a continuous process of reinforcing your new identity through daily choices, adjustments, and actions. Every day becomes an opportunity to strengthen the foundation you're constructing. As you commit to this rebuilding process, you begin to realize that you are not just changing your behavior, you are redefining your identity. You stop living according to who you were and begin living according to who you are becoming. This shift lifts you into a new level of self-respect, self-awareness, and self-accountability. Your environment supports your vision, your habits align with your ambition, and your standards reflect your worth. Eventually, The life you once only imagined begins to feel normal because you rebuilt the structures that make it possible. You no longer feel like you're fighting against your surroundings or your own patterns. Everything around you becomes aligned with your growth, reinforcing your progress and accelerating your evolution. And as you continue rebuilding, you create a new reality, one that reflects discipline, intention, and the highest version of yourself. Growth requires discomfort because every step toward a stronger, wiser, more capable version of yourself forces you to confront parts of your life you've been avoiding. Comfort feels safe, but it keeps you stagnant. Discomfort stretches you, challenges you, and exposes your weaknesses, not to shame you, but to show you exactly where you need to grow. There is no evolution without friction, no progress without pressure, and no transformation without a willingness to endure moments that push you beyond your familiar limits. Discomfort is the doorway to expansion because it interrupts your old patterns. When you remain comfortable, you repeat the same behaviors, think the same thoughts, and live at the same level. Nothing changes because nothing challenges you. But the moment you step into discomfort, your mind is forced to adapt. It begins searching for solutions, building resilience, and strengthening your capacity. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable, and what once felt impossible becomes your new normal. The discomfort you encounter in growth is not punishment, it is preparation. Every struggle develops a skill, every setback strengthens a mindset, and every challenge builds a form of endurance you didn't have before. The people who rise are not the ones who avoid hardship, but the ones who learn to work through it. Growth is the result of choosing to face what others run from, to endure what others escape, and to push forward when others retreat. Discomfort also reveals your true potential. You never know how much strength you possess until life demands you use it. You never realize how capable you are until you are forced to stretch beyond your comfort zone. Growth requires you to step into situations where you don't feel ready, don't feel confident, or don't feel in control. These are the moments that shape you. These are the moments that prove you are more powerful than the limitations you once believed. There will be times when discomfort feels overwhelming, when you question whether the struggle is worth it, when your old habits try to pull you back into the familiar. This is where most people quit. But growth is not found at the beginning of discomfort. It's found in the persistence that follows. When you stay in the process long enough, you begin to develop emotional endurance. You learn that discomfort is temporary, but the strength it builds is permanent. Choosing growth means choosing to embrace situations that are not easy. It means accepting that becoming better will require sacrifice, discipline, and resilience. It means pushing through the days when your motivation is low and your doubts are high. It means showing up when you'd rather escape and following through when quitting feels more convenient. Growth demands a level of self-respect that refuses to let comfort dictate your future. Discomfort also teaches you to detach from your old identity. The person you used to be cannot survive in the environment you're moving into. Growth requires you to shed old habits, old beliefs, and old behaviors, and that process is uncomfortable because it feels like losing a part of yourself. But this discomfort is necessary because you cannot step into your next level while holding onto the parts of you that kept you at your last level. When you embrace discomfort as part of the process, you begin to see challenges differently. Instead of fearing difficulty, you interpret it as a sign that you're progressing. Instead of avoiding pressure, you use it to strengthen your resolve. Instead of retreating when things get hard, you lean in and learn. The discomfort becomes a signal that you are exactly where you need to be, on the edge of your next breakthrough. As you continue to face discomfort consistently, you begin to develop confidence rooted in experience. You realize that every time you walked into something uncomfortable and made it through, you became stronger. You start trusting your ability to handle more, to do more, and to become more. Growth becomes less about reaching a goal and more about becoming the kind of person who can thrive under pressure and rise in moments where the old version of you would have collapsed. Eventually, you stop running from discomfort and start using it as fuel for your evolution. You understand that growth is not supposed to feel comfortable, and comfort is not supposed to lead to growth. You learn to step boldly into the unknown, into the challenging, into the unfamiliar, knowing that every uncomfortable step is shaping you into the strongest version of yourself. Action is the ultimate catalyst because nothing in your life changes until you move. You can plan, visualize, dream, and prepare, but none of it reshapes your reality unless you're willing to take the first step. Action cuts through doubt, silences fear, and disrupts the cycles that have kept you stuck. It transforms intention into momentum and turns possibility into progress. Without action, even the greatest ideas remain trapped in your mind, unable to affect your life in any meaningful way. Action forces your goals into the physical world. The moment you act, you shift from thinking to becoming. Every move you make reinforces your commitment and reshapes your identity. You stop telling yourself what you want to do and start proving it through behavior. And the more you act, the more your confidence grows because action gives you evidence that you are capable of following through on what you say. Confidence is built through proof, and proof only comes through action. Action is also the antidote to fear. Most fears live only in your imagination, growing stronger the longer you avoid them. But when you confront what you've been afraid to do, you realize that fear weakens in the presence of movement. Action exposes the truth behind your fears and reduces their power over you. Each time you act despite fear, you build courage, and that courage carries you through challenges that once intimidated you. Momentum begins the moment action begins. One small step creates a chain reaction that pulls you into your next step. Action builds on itself, creating a rhythm that makes consistency easier. People often wait for motivation to act, but action creates motivation. When you move, your mind follows your body. You start feeling more capable, more focused, and more determined. Momentum is not a gift. It's a result of repeatedly choosing to act even when you don't feel ready. Action also brings clarity. You can't always think your way into understanding what works and what doesn't. You have to experiment, make mistakes, adjust, and try again. Action reveals information that planning alone can never give you. Through action, you learn your strengths, uncover your weaknesses, and discover what needs improvement. It turns confusion into direction because experience teaches you what contemplation cannot. Taking action separates you from the version of yourself that only talks in dreams. Many people have potential, but only those who act turn potential into accomplishment. Action is what distinguishes growth from stagnation, progress from excuses, and success from regret. You cannot become who you want to be if you keep living like who you used to be. Action breaks the identity of procrastination and replaces it with an identity rooted in discipline and execution. Action also builds resilience. When you take consistent steps toward your goals, you inevitably encounter challenges, setbacks, and failures. But each time you keep moving, you train yourself to endure, adapt, and rise. Action gives you the emotional toughness that staying still can never develop. You learn that failure is not something to fear, but something to use. You learn that setbacks do not define you unless you stop acting. Your future depends on action because time will pass whether you move or not. Every day you delay is a day of progress you lose. Action ensures that you are not just existing, but advancing. It connects today's effort to tomorrow's outcome, giving your life direction and purpose. When you act consistently, you shape your future intentionally instead of leaving it to chance. You begin to experience the rewards of being someone who takes responsibility for their own progress. Action eliminates excuses. Once you start moving, you no longer have room to justify inaction. You stop blaming circumstances and start relying on effort. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start creating moments through discipline. Excuses cannot survive in the presence of consistent action because your results start speaking louder than your reasons. You begin to understand that execution is more powerful than explanation. Ultimately, action transforms who you are at the deepest level. It rewrites your beliefs about what you can do, reshapes your habits, and redefines your standards. The person who takes action becomes a person of progress, purpose, and power. Every step you take, no matter how small, builds the path toward the life you want to create. And with each action, you step further away from limitation and closer to the strongest version of yourself.